Morning folks, Ariel over here at Nyth. Just going to do a little update on what the garden looks like for reference, and because this is what I try to do here, show the ups and the downs and the good and the bad. And I have had spectacular garden years. This is not going to be one of them, I'm pretty sure. So for a little review, if you haven't been following along here for a while, we moved locations this spring, moved the tiny house to a whole new spot. So this is the same garden layout as past garden videos, but it is in a new spot that is new to this year. Last year was probably the most beautiful garden I ever had. I do attribute that partially to, well, to several things. The weather kind of cooperated. I'd had 7 years of feeding compost and such into the soil there, and I had done a soil test, as you might remember, and there were a few things that it said the soil was just a little imbalanced in, and I mean little, like when it was like zinc and boron it needed, and in the surface area of my garden something like 2 tablespoons across the entire garden. So not much, but I did that and I did have the most spectacular crop I've ever had. We will get there with this, but this is what it looks like right now. This little corner is where you saw me cut the chive seed heads off the other day. This is all just herbs and stuff that do belong back over there in planters around the house as soon as they get there. This is just temporary. And yes, things look yellow here right now. That's because chives go yellow as they die back. If I cut them the whole way back, they will grow out and look green again. This is a plant called creeping Jenny. It normally hangs down around the planters. It is yellow. That's the way it is. Coming this way, I've got some cabbages, a few other herbs, and this whole bed and the rest of that one are potatoes. They do not look very good. So I think the factors going on for the garden this year are, it got a really late start due to moving it all. It was planted about 6 weeks later than I normally plant things, and now we're about 8 weeks after that. So if you figure that maybe things would have normally looked at this stage 2 weeks after I'd planted this year, they wouldn't have been so far behind. So that's part of it. Part of it, I'm sure, is also the extreme weather we've had. It's kind of misty and cool this morning. We actually got a drizzle yesterday, and we got a downpour the day before. We got 1.5 inches of rain. That's more water than we've got in the last 4 months total, I think. So that was a wonderful blessing. But before that, it has been dry. The plants in this garden have only, until a day ago, seen a couple tiny little sprinkles and one decent rain. And it's been super hot. It's been 90 degrees every day. And everything I plant is designed to handle frosts and freezes all summer long, because that is our normal weather. Normally, even when it gets into the 70s during the day in the summer, it's still at or very close to freezing at night. I don't know why the potatoes are mad though. They grew up to about this height shortly after planting, which was a good start, and then they've just kind of sat there. They haven't done a thing. I have to think there's something missing in this soil that they would like to have. I don't know what it is. There are 3 varieties of potatoes, so I don't think it's tied to a particular variety. They're from 2 different sources, so I think it's not tied to a particular source. The one batch from the one source, I've got a friend who planted some as well. Theirs are up this big and tall and lush, so I don't think it's an issue with that. I think it's something going on here that's making them mad. I don't know what they're doing underneath, if they're actually growing little potatoes or just doing nothing. Find out later. But for some reason, the potatoes just are not happy. Now, I have sent off a soil test for this soil as well. I should have the results back maybe today, maybe another day. So I will be very curious to see what potential imbalances in the minerals and such there are here, see if we can get that worked out. Also, over time, I'm just going to keep doing what I did before and adding lots of compost. I've got 2 big compost piles going over at that end of the property with just all weeds and stuff that I've been pulling, and some manures and kitchen scraps and all that kind of stuff. That will be added on top. By next year, the half broken down wood chips that were put under this should be more broken down. So hopefully it'll be a better year next year. I don't know if they're struggling because of the late start, the extreme heat, the extreme dryness, or something missing in the soil. But that's what's going on over there. Let's move the camera. This bed is all cabbage, 2 kinds of green and then purple. We both really like cabbage. I like eating it in everything from various coleslaws. I did a really good like Mexican kind of imitation style coleslaw the other day, and it's delicious. Might have to do a cooking video on that. Anyway, between that and I make lots of sauerkraut and the Danish Christmas cabbage, which is what a lot of the purple would get used for, I've found that we can easily eat a lot of heads of cabbage in a year. And normally cabbage does really well for me with no issues. Usually by this many weeks after planting, you would not see any soil here. These leaves would all be, you know, this big around, overlapped into each other, and you wouldn't see the ground. That's clearly not the case. The cabbages aren't even, there's a little ball in the middle, but it's not even starting to really make a head. That one is just a tiny bit. It's bigger than some of its neighbors. Again, I suspect the extreme heat is a big deal with why cabbages are struggling. They like cool weather, and normally we're cool all the time. So they weren't doing well. They were just kind of sitting here doing nothing, and then they got attacked by these little bugs. I think they're all dead now, but little black, I think they're flea beetles, started just eating the edges of every single leaf. I've had flea beetles in the garden before. Usually I only see a couple. They're usually only on my tiny little seedlings, like when they first come up and have their first two little leaves. I've never seen them attack adult plants, but in general, pests and bugs and diseases, just like with people and animals, attack weak, unhealthy, and struggling plants. And I think my cabbages were already weak, unhealthy, and struggling. And so they got attacked. I did have some neem oil spray put on them. I think they're gone, but I had to do a few rounds of spraying with that, and they definitely did some damage. I don't know how well these cabbages, because they were already struggling, if they're gonna grow out of that at all and actually make a cabbage as we hopefully eventually get some cooler weather. But I don't know, maybe this summer's just gonna go like the spring did. It went from below freezing, below normal temperatures, straight to 90 degrees with no break. So I don't know if the fall is gonna do the same thing, 90 degrees straight to blizzards. We'll have to see. But they're not doing real great, which is kind of sad. The one thing that's happier than normal is the green beans. I have yellow ones and green ones and purple ones. They're just starting to bloom, so I'm not picking beans yet, but I try a few every year because I like beans, but they normally really struggle with the cool temps around here. I keep them covered with those frost covers for a whole lot of the year normally, and because it's not been cold, they've been pretty happy. You can see they're taking off, vining up, they're just starting to bloom. They look pretty good. Still not spectacular, but better than a lot of things. The strawberries seem happy. They were kind of disrupted by being transplanted this spring. They are now sending out tons and tons of runners all over the place. As they get a little bigger, I'll cut them off and transplant them to more places under the trees and such to be a ground cover. They look pretty good and happy. The lettuce bed overall looks good. Time to start cutting a bunch of little lettuces. All these different colors are different varieties of lettuce, and they're doing okay, not spectacular. This bed was some kind of loose leaf Chinese cabbages. They again were really struggling, I think probably first with the heat, and then they got nearly obliterated by those flea beetles. I think they were a cruciferous veggie loving flea beetle because they didn't really touch anything else, but anything in the cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower family, they just decimated. And those plants are already so small and struggling, I doubt they're going to grow out of their damage, even though the flea beetles are gone. This is along the outside of one of the paths in the garden. This is just cool to see. I don't know what kind of little lacy mushroom that is that grew up overnight since we actually had some moisture, but that's encouraging because it should mean that we're getting some good soil fungus life established here, and with some moisture it sprouts mushrooms, which are of course the fruit of a fungus basically, but I don't think there was much fungal life in this soil when we moved in, so that's encouraging. So now we're over, this is still the end of the cabbage bed. This bed is broccoli and cauliflower and why am I blanking on Brussels sprouts. They are all in that same family as cabbage. They've all struggled similarly. They all got hit by flea beetles. I don't really expect to see a harvest from any of them. Now if you see these yellow flowers in between here, I actually just planted those about a week ago. They're zucchinis. A friend had too many sprouted and they were too thick and they needed thinning, and so she gave me some, and I pulled them up, transplanted, and thought, well, I don't think this bed's going to produce anything else this year, so I just put them in between there to see if they would survive transplanting in the heat, and they seem to be taking off, so we'll see if we actually get some zucchini there. That wasn't the original plan. Clear back here is the onion bed. They're doing okay. Like I said, the garden got such a late start. Onions always grow nice and slow for me. They're not doing spectacular, so we'll see how good of an onion harvest I get. I doubt it's going to look like last year's, but I think I'm going to get some onions. And then back here I've got beets and cucumbers. They're both doing mediocre. The only thing that actually looks really happy this year is right here, my pea bed. And I've got different varieties. You can see these are more of a tall climbing pea. They're a lot higher. These are, I guess they climb some. They're not truly a bush pea, but they're not as tall, and so on. And they're blooming away. They look happy. They look vibrant. They're just starting to, I haven't had enough peas to actually pick a meal, but there are some just getting ready, enough that you can start to, feel the pod is filled out, and when you shell it, you're getting stuff that looks like this. Some good peas. So I think in a few more days I'll actually, have some bowlfuls of peas to eat. Along the edge of the peas were the carrots, which really struggled to germinate, I think due to the late planting and the heat. But the ones that did come up seem to be doing well. Carrots always grow nice and slow here. I don't plan to harvest them till fall anyway. So I think I will get some carrots, just not a ton. And that's kind of, the peas are delicious. How the garden is doing. I do suspect that it is struggling for the variety of reasons, the late planting, the extreme heat, the very, very dry weather. We've had below 10% humidity, and yes, I can water, and I'm thankful I can, but you still can't keep things moist when it's consistently 90 degrees and less than 10% humidity. And then I suspect there's something missing in the soil. Of course, I've already got the composted wood going under there that I've been breaking down for maybe 9 years before it went under there, so it wasn't like freshly cut wood, because I know that can sap nutrients from the soil for a while. It was already mostly broken down. I have added some powdered kelp to all the beds, just as a general soil amendment, that kelp, being a plant from the sea, tends to have all the little micronutrients that I suspect the soil in this, formerly commercially farmed field we bought was probably missing. And the peas actually were kind of just sitting and doing nothing until the day I added that kelp powder, and then they really took off. I don't know if that was coincidental or if that actually helped. And yeah, so I'm really curious when I get that soil test results back, if there's, some mineral imbalances that maybe we can work on. And hopefully the weather and everything will cooperate next year. I won't be moving the garden, so it'll get planted in a timely manner, and hopefully we'll get a little bit of food out of it this year. I don't think it's going to be the 535 pounds or whatever of produce that we ate out of our garden last year. But that's life. You have ups and downs. Like somebody commented, this is why grocery stores are very popular, because you just go there and you get things and you don't have to worry about any of this. So that's a quick update on how the garden's doing. Hopefully if you all are growing things, they are doing better than mine this year. Over here at Nyth, thank you so much for watching these videos and spending some of your very valuable time choosing to do that. We hope you found something that was useful, educational, helpful, maybe save someone else some time and trouble, or just something just plain beautiful. If you don't want to miss any videos, subscribe and hit the bell. And thanks for coming along on our journey as we build a new little homestead with our tiny house and everything to come.